And joining us in studio is Fiso Mahlangu, ANN7 resident political analyst. And we have Andile Mqitama. He's the national convener of Black First and Land First. And you at home, give us a call, 011-542-2186. We did extend an invitation to the economic freedom fighters. And again, no surprises that they declined. Nonetheless, we continue with the discussion around Malema's perceived a complete U-turn on Absa Bank, having pronounced previously that they were going to occupy Absa and being the champion of the poor and reversing the ills of the past. Andile, let's start with you.
Yes, I think today was the complete evidence being presented that the EFF is no longer interested in fighting white capital. In fact, it has become the biggest defender of white monopoly capital. On our part, and we are, of course, ideologically different, but we're all black people. And we have extended our hand to EFF and said, you were the first to call for Absa to be occupied. You've said in 2015 that because it stole money, and now we have an opportunity and new evidence that shows that indeed the claims that you were making are true. Let us go and occupy Absa and make sure that it pays back the money. And there has been silence, as you know, and then today it was like, no, we will not occupy Absa. Not only that, he went further, of course, defending Rupert, repeating exactly the same message of imperialism and colonialism from London. Our argument is that our leaders must make sure they don't go to London, because before they go to London, they say one thing. When they come back from London, they have a completely different message. The call for President Zimbabwe, the President of Zimbabwe to go, President Mugabe, is a call of Robin Renwick. We know this. He's been trying to have a regime change in Zimbabwe. And he met Julius in London under secret rules of the meeting. Nobody knows what was said between them. But for us, for him to reject a united possibility in action, to confront white monopoly capital. Remember, in South Africa, our biggest problem, our biggest central contradiction is white monopoly capital, which has our land, which has our minds, which has our wealth. Until we defeat white monopoly capital, there's no chance for us black people.
Andile, we also sit in a precarious position where some might have this idea that the white monopoly capital is just a red herring, a hoax that is brought up by primarily BLF. They've even said the Decolonization Foundation, that it is a fallacy, that it doesn't exist. We saw Justice Malala's piece also referring to the same, saying that essentially these people that talk about white monopoly capital are being paid and being bankrolled, and that is besides the point. The reality is that the reason why we had a bankrupt state was the fact that there are some companies and families that enrich themselves before we could distribute the spoils.
Well, and certainly they rarely enrich themselves, and the government of national unity at the time handed over to the first democratic government of this country, and that government essentially was broke. And that's why we have some of the struggles we are today. It shouldn't surprise us when people from various media agencies, Cindy, make sometimes ludicrous, profoundly ludicrous statement, sometimes very insensitive and baddening on the soups and carrots of apartheid. It depends what narrative they are speaking from. Whatever perhaps Rupert declares in the morning briefs of what they will speak, and they'll speak. And so we can expect that there's going to be a lot of things, opinion pieces in the Sunday Times that you expect. A radical transformation is not going to be tidy. It's not going to leave everyone in a chappy mood. If the gloves are going to be off, there's going to be a lot of media spillage. There's going to be a lot of ego confrontations. And those are things to accept. But the reality is, whether any political party likes it or not, it is the people of this country that must arise and go and demand their future that was stolen from them, that was looted from Absa. And from my point of view, it shouldn't be a political party's decision. If your country is looted collectively as a nation, we need to demand that that money was paid. And I fail to understand how South Africa, in its collective approach, though it was very political, desired for President Zuma to pay back the money. And they didn't even know why and who had raised that case with the public protector. But suddenly we know of looting that was proven in the CIX report and many other reports, but we want to cast a blind eye to it because we want to protect those who fund us and those who, you know, who are the predecessors of the movement, the ANC in this time. South Africa must arise from this shell that they are sleeping in, and I pray that they will walk to the red gates of financial institutions and demand the payback for the theft and the lies that were put and poured upon our parents and our grandparents in 1994 and pre-1994.
All right, news just in now. Malema's tyrant against the public protector has drawn sharp rebuke from Black First, the Land First movement. The BLF has told the EFF to keep their hands off the public protector. BLF says Malema is targeting Mkhwebane as she dared to hold White Monopoly Capital accountable. Andile Mqitama alleges that the attack on the public protector is calculated to divert attention from Absa, and BLF says Malema is dodging any confrontation with Absa to avoid upsetting Johan Rupert. And joining us is the chair of the MKVA, that's Re Kebi Mapatswe. Thank you so much for your time. Good evening to you. I mean, we've got you on record saying that, of course, the ills or economic ills of the past somehow have been swept under the rug and that needs to be investigated as extensively as possible. Talking also about the brazen theft and fraud that took place before the establishment and during the establishment of the Government of National Unity. With what speed or urgency do you think that the country or the government and corporate citizens are dealing with this matter, or is it essentially a one-sided approach?
Look, I think we appreciate the report of the public protector and the CX report because it has opened our eyes that there was a lot of looting during apartheid, which our government, when we came into power, we did not investigate that. So as MKMVA, we are calling for a judicial commission of inquiry to dig deep into the fraudulent activities that happened during the apartheid era and also speak to these companies that benefited.
So I think we've lost you there. Just please stay on the line. I just want to go back to what the EFF has also been alleging, saying that this whole campaign is essentially for the Zuptas, meaning for Jacob Zuma and Gupta alleged influence or interest. Your response?
Let's just deal with that, particularly as it relates to the Absa matter. It was Julius himself who said in 2015 that he will occupy Absa. And he said, in fact, next year, that was 2016, he'll occupy Absa, start with Absa. Now, and then today he says, yeah, we are the first to say that. And then he says, anyway, anybody who calls for the occupation of Absa is joining a call for the Guptas. So this doesn't make logical sense. What is happening really here is that the narrative created by the white-owned media, including opposition parties who want regime change to maintain the white status quo, is to create the Guptas as a bogey of some kind of, this is the problem. And Zuma is the problem in South Africa. It is not white capital, it's not land thieves. That is why EFF was able to give political power to white people in some of the key metros, because they say the problem in South Africa today is the Guptas and the problem is Jacob Zuma. When there's a need to confront white capital, they bring in the Guptas even when they actually don't belong there. We have been very clear as a movement. If there's any wrongdoing by the Gupta family, please open cases, let them be tried. In fact, when we call for a judicial commission of inquiry on the banks, we are very clear, include the Ogbay or the Gupta family businesses, let them also be investigated. But it cannot be red herring. It cannot be when we confront white capital, you bring in the Guptas. Like on this Absa thing, where is the Guptas here? This matter was reported in 2011, and we as BLF have been saying there's no progress because Advocate Chulima Donzela, in our view, was protecting white capital. Now there is a leaked draft or a preliminary report which shows and confirms our suspicions all the time that white capital have stolen. Now they say this is a Gupta matter. It isn't, and that's why we are going ahead Saturday. We're starting our action against Absa to say we are going national pickets on main Absa outlets, and our message is clear. Absa must stop wasting time. It must pay back the money. This has got nothing to do with the Guptas.
Yeah, let's get Rema Patswe back on the line. Thanks so much and good evening again. Just the attack also on the public protector advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane, the EFF saying that they regret having supported her or nominated her as the signatories to her appointment, as it were, and already casting a sense of doubt in terms of her ability, that she's placid, that somehow she is biased to Jacob Zuma. How was the ANC, at least in your, as an alliance to the ANC, dealing, and the government in general, dealing with the protection of the credibility of the public protector? It's still early days for her to be taking this kind of flack. Okay, Rema Patswe, the line is delayed and it's also distorted, so I'm not sure if our technicians on that side will be able to assist. But let's just come back to the EFF saying that anybody that raises concerns or objections to the Ruperts will essentially be a target for them to deal with. What do you even, if you were to interpret that into a level of protection, or is it a case of there's action that's going to be taken, rights? What's going on?
I think the threats have gone raging, although I must also express that today's threats were rather malign instead of malignant, and that is the style one would expect, particularly from leaders in this country. You'll hear about Vaseline and penetration and all of that. You'll hear about witches and witch hunts in one, and state capture in one sentence. That's the sort of thing that you know, Mr. Malema would raise in topicology. So those threats should not come as a surprise. What was a surprise, though, today was his target and his hit on President Mugabe, and the threats on the public protector, to say they are waiting for one document, but they're coming after the public protector. I think it's a very grave threat for someone to suggest, if you come after Rupert, I'm coming after you. And if people don't believe that, they should go and view that interview. That's what he said. Basically, in those words, we are compiling proof and would come after all of the agents of Mr. Johan Rupert. I don't think anybody should put themselves in a position where they should be defending the CIX report and attaching the Absa theft to the Gupta family. I don't think the Gupta families are the ones that compiled the CIX report. This report, the new one, the one that leaked, was compiled by Ms. Thuli Madonsela. We don't know why she refused to release it, though remembering that she ran to release other reports, such as the state of capture report. She wrote this report that leaked. It was always on the desk of the former public protector. I don't know what perhaps the Gupta family has to do with that. So this was a populist agenda, I think, for Mr. Malema to rise, because the likes of Mr. Mqitama have risen and have done something that he claimed he would do, but he never did. So today was just a populist remark, perhaps for him to get some sort of popularity and credibility again. He used to dominate the social platforms in this country and all interviews, and the journalist loved all of the insults he was slurring, and he hasn't been in that space for some time. And I think today was just a populist mark, nothing new really.
Yeah, but also the whole economic radicalism debate has been an ongoing one. It's enshrined in the ANC manifesto, as it were. And I think there was an opportunity, obviously, for the EFF to latch on to that because of the second transition, or the need for reconciliation and all those processes that we needed to stabilize the country. But realistically speaking, even if you are EFF supporter, ANC, DA, whatever, the economic radicalism in itself, based on capacity alone, is not something that a smaller party would be able to realize. And of course, in the absence of the ANC taking the position as a majority and changing or reforming policy, that in itself would also mean that they are not effecting economic radicalism. So what I'm wanting to establish, the probability, you know, of even getting back the 2.3 billion rand apartheid loot, and even investigating further? Is there an appetite, number one? Secondly, what kind of resistance is it likely to face?
I think the first resistance is the one that's come from the opposition parties, and Mr. Malema is leading that now, we know. The attack on the public protector was quite strident, was quite shocking, and really vile. And it was calculated really to try to undermine her authority and stature, because she, just like Minister Mahlobo, is seen as having gone against white capital. The previous public protector had protected white capital, but this report, and that is what is really angered Julius, is the fact that this public protector has gone and finalized a report which shows that, in fact, South Africa, the problem of corruption, the problem of accumulation by other means is the problem of white capital. This is what this report shows. And having gone to London with the now clearly an agenda of protect white capital, give white people the political power, and they will get benefits. We don't know what, because it doesn't make sense. Any black person in this country, why would you not want white capital to account? Now what you're saying about the need for us to unite, this is what we are saying as BLF. This country does not have a black agenda. We are too divided as black people. 23 years down the line, all of us black people have got nothing. And these settlers, these minority settler people who came here 1652, took our land, enslaved us, have everything. Can't we find one point where we all unite to make sure that we get something back? And this case of Absa and the 26 billion stolen by white capital is one of those things that can unite us. However, clearly, today we can say with confidence, EFF is no longer part of a revolutionary agenda. It has become the biggest bodyguards of white capital, even bigger than the ANC, which we have been criticizing for all this time by saying we are not transforming South Africa, you are not serving black people. But now EFF has outdone the ANC as the bodyguard of white capital. And they are very open about it. I mean, when we hear this stuff about Johan Rupert, that the reason why the minister, Mahlobo, today was insulted is because he was investigating Johan Rupert. Didn't Julius Malema say before he went to London that Johan Rupert is Stellenbosch Mafia? What do you do with the mafia? Don't you investigate to see what's going on there? Now he comes back from London. The first thing he did, by the way, was to ask money publicly from Johan Rupert. He said, Johan Rupert, give me money, support us, so that we can get rid of Zuma. And then he even said that at the time to Johan Rupert, don't just speak, let us join hands. So now we can see they're joining hands after the election, they join hands with white people. Any rational black person today need to know that EFF no longer stands for the interests of black people. We have tried ourselves, we have humbled ourselves, we have said let's work together. They can work with the DA, they can march with AfriForum, but they will not march and work with black people.
All right, I believe third time lucky we have Ray Kebi Mapatswe on the line. Ray Mapatswe, just taking this whole debate, which has become very much a sideshow, depending on which side of the fence you sit, in terms of dealing with the inequality and sharing in the prosperity and wealth of this country. As the ANC, how... I mean, what we've heard in the January 8th statement, the radicalism, the bolsterous statement that was made, but it needs to be broken down into tangible timelines where people can see the transfer of wealth, or at least the distribution thereof equitably amongst people. What can you give us if you're taking us in your confidence that this is something that will be a reality in our lifetime?
Look, what we are saying as MKMV is that first, we support the report of the public protector, if it is not yet published publicly. But it is clear that the apartheid regime fraudulently took money from the government. And there are people who benefited from that, like Absa. So we are saying Absa must pay back the money. But what also we are saying as MKM is that after 20 years of our democracy, our government did not do an audit of what do we have in the country and what was stolen. And we think if we can do that by establishing a judicial commission of inquiry, we'll be able to address some of the challenges that are faced by our government now in addressing inequalities, unemployment, and poverty. Because there are people who benefited, the Afrikaners benefited a lot during the apartheid era. And if we don't come out openly as the ANC We want the ANC towards the policy conference that this Judicial Commission of Inquiry is very important. We must dig deep down what did they loot and what is due to the government, and so that we can be able to address these inequalities. We cannot sit back as if business as usual. The president has spoken about the radical economic transformation. As MKMVA was saying, towards the policy conference, we are not going to a talk show. We are going to go there with solutions. That if the president says we want radical economic emancipation, we must implement it. And people who are not ready to implement the policies and decisions of the ANC, they must not disturb us, they must step aside so that we implement our policies. We deal with poverty, we deal with unemployment, we deal with inequalities, including the issue of land. We are saying if it comes to a push, legally so, let's go and amend the constitution to suit the interest of our people.
And is this a real debate that is happening in real time in the sense of changing the constitution, which largely protects the haves and not dealing adequately with the issues of redressing the injustices of the past? Are we likely to see a cabinet reshuffle? You were saying that those that stand or are obstacles in realizing economic transformation would have to move aside.
Look, we're all deployees of the African National Congress. And once the African National Congress takes a policy position at the conference, that is binding to all deployees of the African National Congress. So therefore, we expect all deployees of the African National Congress to respect the decisions of the conference. So those who are deployed in government, they must speedily implement the decisions of the conference, and no one must dilly-dally about say it can't be implemented. We have waited for a long time without addressing this issue of land. The process has been very, very slow. So we are saying in order to fast-track some of these things, it is important that we look at the amendment of the constitutions so that we address the issue of land. The president has said if you don't have land, you don't have freedom. If you don't have the economy in your hands, you don't have freedom. So we want to enjoy freedom in our lifetime. This is what we fought for, and we want the generations that will come after us to say at least these people, they addressed what some of our people failed to do.
Okay, Rema Patswe, you're going to have to leave it there. Just in wrapping up, gentlemen, here in studio, the AFF essentially saying they'll deal with the Absa matter when time permits. At the moment, that's not necessarily their focus. Bahamba Pansi, they're building, capacitating their branches, and they're not going to collaborate and subscribe to the efforts, again, of what they refer to as a Zupta plan. Having said that, though, what does that say, not only about the stance of the AFF when it comes to radical economic transformation, but also the fact that essentially they like the goalkeeper and one-man band when it comes to issues of economic transformation, whereas it is a national imperative?
I often ask ANC leaders when we debate these matters, and I usually say, where were you when all of this was collapsing? Or where did the EFF or any other party for that matter see a gap? Where were you? And I think perhaps we need to focus or align ourselves and slightly marginalize ourselves to a new ANC or look at leaders who can deliver. My question is always, what were they doing for 23 years? Now that on the 23rd year, we have to take a radical transformation. And it's almost a copy. Mr. Malema says President Zuma benchmarked that from him. And some things are ridiculous and atrocious. But perhaps this is also a wake-up call to the ruling party to say we are waiting for the deliverables on land. We are waiting for the deliverables on transformation in the workplace. We are waiting for the deliverables on how to empower the indigent in this country. And our quest is to speak to the leaders. On the floor, anyone can say what they want, and that's to be expected. But we must address the leaders in this country to say we are waiting for the deliverables, that which they promised in 1994.
All right.